Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to PTV World News. I'm Shahzad Qayyum with the top stories of this hour. Prime Minister Imran Khan wins the vote of confidence in the National Assembly as 178 MNAs repose confidence in Imran Khan as Prime Minister of the country. Speaking in the National Assembly after winning the vote of confidence, Prime Minister Imran Khan says no one can stop Pakistan's progress. He says the government has decided to bring electoral reforms to ensure complete transparency in elections. President Dr. Arif Alvi says the government of Prime Minister Imran Khan is heading in right direction and taking effective steps for economic stability and overcoming the challenge of coronavirus pandemic. Minister for Information Shibli Farag says Prime Minister Imran Khan wants to make Pakistan prosperous by ensuring the rule of law. An election commission of Pakistan will hear Ali Gilani's matter on Thursday. Eight terrorists, including 3 commanders, killed during intelligence-based operations conducted by security forces in Boya and Dusali areas of North Waziristan. "38 more people die of COVID-19 while 1,714 test positive across the country during 24 hours. Indian farmers block a 6-lane expressway outside New Delhi to mark the 100th day of protest against deregulation of agriculture markets to add pressure on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. Japan beat Pakistan 4-0 in the Davis Cup Tennis World Cup. One tie in Islamabad. PTV Sports telecast the event live. But that's all for the moment. For more details and live streaming, log on to our website world.ptv.com.pk. You can find us on Facebook page with the name of PTV World and follow us on Twitter at WorldPTV. Thanks a lot for watching and it's goodbye for now.
Just like the billboard paintings performed in Pakistan, there is another indigenous form of art performed in Pakistan, and it is the truck art. With its all colorful floral patterns, depiction of human heroes with creative aspects, ratios, calligraphy of poetic verse, and drivers' words of wisdom. This form of art is truly a part of Pakistani transport tradition. Many trucks and buses in Pakistan are highly customized and decorated by their owners. These adjourned vehicles are considered as moving art or jingle art. Because of their unique decor style, these vehicles are quite distinct in layers from other trucks around the world. Each part of the vehicle is decorated differently, with variations depending on the regional style. In Pakistan, a truck driver owner usually pays $3,000 to $5,000 for their vehicle's external decoration. The art embellishes such trucks according to the particular taste of the driver. Nearly every city in Pakistan has a unique decor. The Balochistan and Peshawari trucks are heavily trimmed with wood. Rawalpindi and Islamabad trucks have permanently featured plastic work. Camel-borne ornamentation is commonly seen in trucks decorated by Sindh artists. These trucks are also representative of different local historical and cultural regions of Pakistan. Thus, these trucks are also representative of different historical and cultural regions of Pakistan, the enchanting arts and crafts of Pakistan.
Book is life. Book is hope. And book is light for the future.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Prime Minister and his vote of confidence as he's taken the vote of confidence again. The ramifications of in the upcoming days of what actually this means for the country, for the future ahead. Will new goals be set as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, as far as the PTI is concerned, as a party, as a statesman? Will he be looking at perhaps some changes in the next couple of months? What do we expect after this vote of confidence? We'll also be talking about the unfortunate incidents as far as between political parties, the PMLN and the PTI, and what that means for the future of politics in this country, what this means for an opposition and a government that unfortunately at this time is at loggerheads. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Amir Hussain, who's a senior columnist. Thank you for joining us today. Ibrahim Khan, who's M&A with PTI. Thank you for being with us today. And Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who's a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us. Amir Saab, we all know that the Prime Minister took his vote of confidence today. It seems to be another beginning. That is what is being said. Of course, in a sense, there is this new kind of this new beginning for the Prime Minister. Do you think things will change as a political party for the PTI and particularly for the government at this time?
Well, I think the coming months are really critical because the momentum we have seen in the last 1 or 2 weeks suggests that there are many more things to come, because the PDM is also making inroads in a way, trying to strike a deal with different state institutions to create a political balance in the system. And what we have seen in the Senate elections and the moral narrative that was coming through, and the money was used and everything was there to bribe into victory. But I think this will continue to happen for coming days as we look at the speeches of the Bilawal Bhutto and Maryam Nawaz today. They suggest that they are going to strike deals, and I think this is one thing. And secondly, there are other challenges.
What kind of deals? I mean, when they say that they're going to strike deals?
Well, I think they had 2-3 different plans. Initially, they wanted to go for resignations, long march, and settle out of the Parliament, trying to mount street pressure.
You think that they've changed their
strategy? They have changed the strategy, and they are now more looking into the no confidence issue, and they will try to do everything to ensure that they effect some change within the Parliament rather than going outside.
But they were hoping for obviously something more than what transpired. And in a sense, the way the Prime Minister took on this and said that, I will take vote of confidence was perhaps also not expected from the opposition. Let's talk more about that. I'm going to go to Ibrahim Khan Sahab. Ibrahim Sahab, like I said, this was an unexpected move, of course a very bold one by the Prime Minister. And of course, what's happened today has reinforced the faith of his own peers in him. Do you think things will change? Because there has been criticism as far as the government is concerned on some things. Do you think that the Prime Minister will be taking stock of that and affecting more changes within the Parliament and also outside, as far as a political party?
Yes, it very clearly reflects that he is going to make major changes within the party and administratively, and a lot of things were talked about regarding judicial and administrative and police reforms, and also the way this dark day, I would call 3rd of March, the way a convict and proven guilty of stealing garnet donated for the people of Pakistan by the Turkish First Lady, and
but he's been disqualified. He's done.
He was disqualified for 5 years for putting $60 million straightly into the pockets of Mr. Zardari.
But Ibrahim Saab,
and in spite of all of that, they made their way through with the old method of this buying and selling. And that's why I'm calling it the darkest day, the 3rd of March as the darkest day in the democratic history of Pakistan. And but in spite of that, the people of, the members of the National Assembly, in the same breath, also voted in favor of the second candidate, the female candidate, Fawzia Arshad.
Right.
And but I think the Prime Minister of Pakistan really stood on very high moral grounds and very high pedestal, that he still wanted to, if anybody or the nation had any questions about his credibility as being Prime Minister of Pakistan with regards to the confidence of the members of the parliament, I think he took a very bold decision. No one in the history of Pakistan has ever done so.
But Ibrahim sir, that's true. Granted, you know, it's certainly a bold move, hasn't been done before, all of that. But there is, of course, a lot of criticism about the fact that, of course, this was by show of hands, and that was a secret ballot. So there is, both things, and the way that, that election happened. It is on the one hand one election, but it has been said to say a lot about his popularity. And Hafiz Sheikh, it's not about Hafiz Sheikh, it's about Imran Khan as the Prime Minister.
Well, you see, they want to twist the things around. Whenever it goes in their favor, they say they need a secret ballot. And when they see something going against them, then they say, okay, there should be, they go against the open ballot. If you recall, even in this Charter of Democracy, the both parties have signed in their, I think it was the 23rd or one of the notes, that they will ensure free and fair elections and transparent. Transparent means, that also includes a show of hands or an open voting. And what happened today was exactly according to the law and with the show of hand. And I think the worst part, which was, the strategy the opposition has taken, I think they should have been there to witness that. And on one hand, they claim that
the fact that they weren't there, what do you think it means today? The fact that they weren't in the assembly, they boycotted this. How do you see that itself?
They did not go to the assembly. How many? Like 3-4 of them, which were it was all pre-planned and managed way of handling things. No, they should have come to the assembly because they make very tall claims about the continuity of the system and believe in democracy, and we will not use the other options, but through democratic norms. And today, by boycotting, they have those tall claims have proven to be false and wrong.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Niaz sir, in terms of what happened today, how do you see the Prime Minister, the vote of confidence itself, and what do you think it means for the politics of this country in the next upcoming months? Do you think things are likely to change? Do you think there's going to be any, because there's a lot being said at this point. There's a lot being said about the future. There's a lot being said about the past and the way that the government can react to things, change things, look at it as an opportunity. How do you see it?
I think the biggest thing that this whole episode has shown is that, this is the first time in Pakistan's history that a sitting Prime Minister lost a major vote in the National Assembly.
Sorry.
He literally had to show that he's the confidence of the Assembly. So I think that's a big setback. No other Prime Minister, there have been, votes of confidences for Prime Ministers before 2010, the 18th Amendment, it was in fact a requirement that any incoming Prime Minister would, take a vote of confidence, but then that was scrapped. And before or after that, there hasn't been a case where, Prime Minister has been forced to, you know, take a vote of confidence because of the fact that he lost a major vote in the National Assembly anywhere in the world, whether it's Pakistan, South Asia or the world. It's seen as a, you know, big setback for any parliamentary government to, you know, lose a major vote in the National Assembly. So at the end, you know, all that...
There's a lot being said from the opposition on the constitutionality of the vote itself. They're also asserting that... Ji, can you hear me?
Yeah, you know, the thing is that, you know, the way this started, this vote of confidence, it seemingly was the Prime Minister's own decision to demonstrate. But under the Constitution, there is no provision for the Prime Minister to take the initiative. The only initiative can come from the President under Article 91-7, that if he or she feels that, you know, the Prime Minister has lost the confidence of the Assembly, he is reasonably sure, then he can ask him. So in a way, you know, the PTI is, you know, pointing fingers towards itself, that, you know, its President thinks that its Prime Minister has lost the confidence of the Assembly and he should, you know, retake the vote. So what has this achieved? You know, it's where, you know, the Prime Minister was 2 days ago, everybody was assuming that he has a majority, and suddenly there was a shock, and all that he has been able to do is to, you know, demonstrate that again, okay, he's been able to get his flock back. But then there is still the question, will the flock stay with him? Can there be another issue where he may lose this you know, vote again? So, you know, it's really shaken the confidence, and it's going to take a lot of doing to, you know, really win back the confidence. And the way to do it is to really focus on governance. And, you know, all you hear today, yesterday, you know, the same kind of shrill messages coming from, you know, PTI ministers, MPs, you know, all these accusations about, you know, the opposition.
Let me go with that to Ibrahim Saab. I'll come back to you. Ji, Ibrahim Saab, there has been, you know, what Niyaz Saab is saying, and unfortunately I think that you will also agree. We've had this discussion numerous times on my program also, the style of politics which we've seen, not only PTI but also the opposition adhere to, the back and forth exchanges between the opposition and the government. How do you think those will change? Because what happened today is also an extension of that kind of, you know, animosity, anger, whatever we call it, building between the opposition and the government. That has to end at some point for there to be concentration on other areas.
There is no second thought to it. What the nation needs to understand, if there are democratic political parties participating or trying to win the hearts of the people of Pakistan, then it's one thing.
Right.
Where they'll be only trying to concentrate on, let's say, better education, health, employment.
Right.
These are the three major issues all over the world where you go, people make their decisions according to these parameters. And I mean, certainly the economy. Here in Pakistan, unfortunately, heads of the two major political parties are not democratic. They are dynasties. They have turned into dynasties. And the political parties have been turned into inheritance sort of ideology. That after me, only my son is competent enough to head this party, no one else, sort of a thing. As a result, as a consequence, what has really happened, that the interests of those two families have become the priority of those parties, and the members of the parties have to follow the command of their leadership.
Right.
Where PTI is only concentrating on subjects of national interest. So when there is a clash of a national and a personal interest, how do you foresee a future?
But Ibrahim Saab, I don't think that's entirely true. Of course, you know, on the one hand you're saying, and I think Amir Saab can also, you know, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, of course, you are saying there is concentration on national issues, economy, all of that, but there is also a considerable part of your own political party that is only concentrating on answering back the opposition or of defending the government. Is that, do you think, wise? Ji Amir Sahib, I'll come back to you.
Well, I think you're right, because there has to be some sort of engagement policy coming from the government, because we are in a time of crisis right now. Political crisis is at its peak, because well, the Prime Minister has secured a confidence vote from the Parliament, but this is one of the larger political spectrum that we can see in the coming days. There is much to go into investing to create some sort of middle ground for everybody, so that if we talk about the national interest means that you have to go through the Parliament, right?
You have to have some kind of relationship with the opposition
that would be,
to move forward.
That will determine the course of action in the future, because now Prime Minister may also do some reshuffling within the Parliament, because there is also internal resentment coming from the elected representatives who feel left out in the big team of those special assistants and technocrats. And I think that reshuffle will build the confidence within the party. When you build the confidence within the party, then you are on a better ground to negotiate with the opposition, because it's not only for a technocrat, it's a TOR. For a political worker, it is an ideological way to secure the party interest as well. So I think that is where we have to strike a balance. I think
exactly. Let's see if that can be done by the government. That is, of course, a huge part of trying to balance both those things. Niyaz Sahib, do you think that there is likely to be a shuffle in the next, in the next upcoming days? Of course, we've seen that Hafiz Sheikh Sahib is, he's not going to resign. That seems to be the news as far as his resignation that was expected earlier. But do you think there will be a shuffle? Do you think that the Prime Minister will try to, like Amir Sahib is saying, perhaps, get in touch with more of his own party members?
Yeah, I mean, they might try a reshuffle, but there are so many balances that they have to maintain, that he won't really have a free hand. He might be able to change a few things, but then we've had reshuffling so many times over the last 2.5 years that it's just become meaningless. Every time they reshuffle and the governance situation doesn't improve at all. It keeps getting worse and worse. So let them do the reshuffling, but I am not hopeful that it will result in improvement in governance. That is the biggest challenge. I mean, 2.5 years have passed, and if you are still talking about leader's attributes or the party's attributes, that it's a non-dynastic party and he's an honest and sincere person, 2.5 years later you should be talking about your policies, your achievements, the fact that you're a non-dynastic party should have produced some results, and there is nothing to see. Even those dynastic parties, I mean, their performance wasn't great, it was quite poor, but at least they were able to deliver something by the midpoint. The PPP's big achievement was the 18th amendment, and that was done by 2010. With the PMLN, their big achievement was CPAC, and that was on the ground. What do you have to show with the PTI? Big change comes from
answer that. We'll go to MG Ibrahim sir.
We have made a great progress on the economic front. The balance of trade, which was in like $20 billion a year in deficit, has been not only decreased, but it has gone into, for the last 5 months, if you were to look at the big fraction figures, first time after 17 years in the recent history of Pakistan, your trade has gone into a surplus.
Ibrahim sir, do you think that the man on the common man, the people suffering from inflation, when will they say that? Do you think that they will say that they are, perhaps things are better for them? When will they say that?
The mismanagement keep on taking place for the last 35 years or so. And in order to fix that and address all those issues and the economic ditches which were left to be filled, we have to look at every aspect of that, and we have to address those issues. It was not just economy. I mean, as I said earlier, there are issues of, administrative, big-time administrative reforms needed, and so many other things.
What happened today, Ibrahim Saab? Let's talk about that. What happened? It was unfortunate. What the kind of scuffle that happened? Unfortunately, it's not new, but the level of it perhaps has increased. And a former Prime Minister like Shahid Khaqan Nawasi, we saw members of PMLN, one of them being a woman, Maryam Aurangzeb. Saiba, the way that the events, the way that they happened were, at the very least, very unfortunate. The kind of precedent that we are setting for politics in this country, the kind of interaction that a PTI, a party in power at this time, has with PMLN, which is in opposition, the whole state of affairs. What would you say about it? That's my question.
Absolutely. I have got the videos with me. It was Musaddiq Malik who started the whole thing, from where I gather that it was all pre-planned.
Okay.
Why would, if let's say there is some procession taking place of PDM, people are all gathered together, and I, being an MNA and well-known person, go and mix up with that, with those people.
But according to them, they were saying they were doing a press conference. Is that not accurate?
The press conference part was a later one. This is just before they were trying to come into, because there are a lot of gathering outside the assembly of the PTI workers. And on the 3rd of March, which nobody even has flashed on TV shows, one of our minister, she was literally attacked and pushed by the PPP workers inside the assembly.
Today?
No, on 3rd. After the results were announced, and she was making her way out, even out of the gallery, and there those PPP guys literally pushed her. And that was a very bad.
Of course, but
okay.
Let's leave parties aside. It was a woman, from your party. Today it was Maryam Aurangzeb, which is from another party. So it doesn't matter. Across the board, we are seeing.
Let's explain the two.
Okay.
She was coming out of the assembly after doing what she was supposed to do, her job as a parliamentarian, while Maryam Aurangzeb and the 3 others were coming there for a press conference. Fine, you do your press conference.
Which is also their job. I mean,
their job. Absolutely. They have the democratic right, and they can say whatever they feel like.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they did do their press conference also. So, before they reached the dais, Musaddiq Malik Saab went on to charging on someone. I have got the video.
Out of the blue?
Out of the blue, because they were saying chore. I mean, fine, they're saying that, so don't respond, because they are massive.
And a lot of the other things
there was a verbal, and all the workers from all parties.
So is verbal fine then?
Then Mr. Musaddiq Malik straightly charges on one of the person, and from there that small scuffle took place, and there was a gathering of, I don't know, like not even hundreds, thousands of people, and I'm glad that nothing more than that went farther into any kind of. Whatever has happened,
the result of that we are seeing today. You have videos, the PMLN has videos. Amir Saab, this is what is being said. The PTI is saying one thing, the PMLN is saying something. We have Maryam Nawaz Saiba go and actually in her press conference say clearly that it is not just then their workers, but her own workers, and PMLN workers can also then retaliate. In my own words, I'm translating what she said, but essentially that is what was said today. So what kind of a politics? Are we going backwards? First it was just words between the two major parties. We were seeing a lot of that between the PDM and the PTI also. A lot of it was verbal abuse. which of course is something reprehensible, which should not be happening between elected representatives of this country. But that is happening, and now we are seeing that actually people are, hitting each other. This was happening in the assembly also. Now it's happening outside. We are seeing women being, abused this way. Whatever other word can you call it? Where are we going? What is
Well,
happening?
I think this is really not good for the democracy in the country, because whoever does that, whether it's PML, PPP or PTI,
like Ibrahim Saab is saying, it was their worker for whatever reason. He didn't do anything, whatever.
whoever,
this happened today.
because this is something that will trigger a lot of problems and challenges for a very weak democracy that we have. I think it could not have happened. It could have been preempted, because those opposition leaders were given a corner where they had to do their press conference, but it happened because there was mob and public place. But I think the way things are being dealt with in the political system are not appropriate as parliamentary. There is a parliamentary ethics, in democracy. The parliamentary ethics says that whatever issue is there, you have a space for negotiation, discussion, debate, and argument, and this is the way it goes.
But it wasn't there. I mean, it was a supporter of PTI, right? Which is what is being said. Ji Ibrahim Saab, that is what is being said. This happened by a supporter of PTI.
No, what happened by it was a verbal just rhetoric, like the N-League people or the PPP people, the workers too. Just
there was no hitting by anyone, you're saying?
There was no hitting. The hitting started by Mr. Musaddiq Malik, who straightly went and charged on one of the person, and he then retaliated in response to that. Which is, I think, in either case, it's not good. I mean, if PPP or PMLN is holding a jalsa, and I straightly walk into that crowd and start giving statements or any kind of agitative nature.
Like is saying, they were given a separate, place.
So they should have gone there, not push through the crowd
within the parliament
or politically.
And in terms of verbal abuse, if we look at the Twitter, for example, which is the most public forum in terms of, if you look at social media, and we see the kind of abuse that is written, about, unfortunately, all the leaders, their followers, PTI followers against the PMLN, PTI, PDM, we've seen that. That is translating into the kind of intolerance now that we are seeing, that a spectacle that we saw today. Isn't that true? Because, there has to be some sort of, we have to hold somebody accountable for this to stop somewhere. Don't you think that it's increasing every day now?
Yeah, and I can speak from my personal experience. I criticize all three parties. I don't support or vote for any of them, PPP, PBL, and PTI. But it's only when, I criticize PTI, that I get abused on Twitter, and that's the experience of so many of my other friends, analysts, journalists, and so on. And PTI can keep putting the blame on PMLN, but whatever clips that I have seen, they clearly show that the aggression came from the side of the PTI, and then later on Mr. Musaddiq and others defended themselves. And then even beyond that, just look at the speech that the Prime Minister made on the eve of the vote of confidence. The open accusations, unnecessary accusations against the Election Commission of Pakistan, which is just doing its job independently after a long time. The unnecessary accusations that they were, helping corruption and so on. And then, once the Election Commission of Pakistan gave a fairly good, mature response, just defending themselves. Again, the abuse that started on Twitter against the Election Commission of Pakistan. So, you just wonder, whether there is the capacity for self-reflection within PTI to see where it's gone wrong. These achievements that have been mentioned, a current account deficit, whose stomach is that going to fill? This is just standard IMF policy. You jack up interest rate, you let your currency devalue, and obviously the economy comes to a screeching halt and your current account deficit goes down. So if PTI only has that to talk about, then it means that, you know, they are openly admitting that they have no achievements in the last 2.5 years, but then you still don't see any capacity for self-reflection and, you know, and an ability to see that we are making a mistake. So I'm still...
Ibrahim Saab, you know, let me give you that time to answer.
This is the first time. This is the first time we are building dams, which is a long-term national interest projects. You see, we hardly had a 1 month reservoir, water reservoir in all of these 73 years.
Right.
And in Ayub Khan's era, I mean, during his tenure, he built those dams, or now we are building those dams where you will be able to generate electricity on a cheapest possible price. At the same time, will be able to have water reservoir for your drinking purposes and also for your irrigation and agriculture use.
A lot of
and
things
since
are
we are an
in the
agricultural
pipeline.
country,
You're saying a lot of things are in the pipeline, the effects of which the people will see.
things, yes, these things just don't happen so quick. I mean, these are time taking and 3 to 5 years plans.
A lot of
where
things Sheikh Rashid Saab said today when he spoke to the assembly. He said, you know, he is of course a big part of your political party. He said that perhaps we need to change the way that we are doing things, if I'm not wrong. Do you agree with the way he spoke, what he said today?
Of course, that's what we are saying. This is a new beginning, where Prime Minister is going to make a lot of changes for further improvement in the system, because once the system is fixed right, only then your efforts can be more fruitful.
But Ibrahim Saab, when you talk about fixing the system, and we've had this discussion on reform before also, you cannot do reform without the opposition. And you don't have that kind of relationship with the opposition to get them to, you know, when you have an opposition chanting about, you know, for the Prime Minister to go, how are you going to get to that kind of reform? How will you find a way? Because we saw what happened with the Senate election.
Okay, yes. The way we are going about it, we are the single party with the majority seats in the National Assembly,
right,
and we are the party with the majority seats in Senate now.
With very little margin, so you know it's not going to be
little
great
but it does not stop us from making small changes in the laws or bringing in tabling bills.
So you're saying irrespective of how the opposition behaves, the PTI is committed
We
to
are in
making
much
the
better
changes.
position
Right,
after
okay.
the Senate elections,
Okay.
that in both houses we will have majority,
Okay.
and we will be able to manage things now, or administer things in much better way, or govern things in much better way, or our policies will be, implemented in much better ways than it was before, because they had a clear majority in the Senate then, and they were giving us a tough time. Regardless of this, that's why I'm saying that you see, if you concentrate on the national interest, then you only object to those things which are against the national interest. But here, regardless of it's in favor of the legislation, or any kind of objective is taken on, or the subject is taken on, the opposition was there to oppose it.
And I don't think they have any plans of changing that. They don't plan to change that in the next couple of months.
That's just fine. But we now have majority in both houses, and I think we'll be able to do much better than before.
Fair enough. Ji Amir Saab, do you agree?
Well, I think first of all, the upper house
challenges have perhaps not decreased but increased for the government?
Because last more than 2.5 years, you have number of issues which you didn't address, and there was a promised reform package that came from the Prime Minister the very first day of his speech in the Parliament, and whereby he said that we will bring certain reforms which we haven't seen last 2.5 years.
Right.
Now, drawing on the lesson learned from the past, then you can come up with a future roadmap for the political reforms. But in order to do that, you need to do policy making, you need to make laws. For that, you need two-third majority in the parliament, for which you have to, interact with the, opposition, because you don't have two-third majority right now. In the upper house, you have 47 seats, they have 53, they are in majority in the upper house. But in lower house, of course, you have a majority, but that is a simple majority, it's not two-third majority. The one thing is that, secondly, I think the challenges are mounting, because the way things are being conducted are not as per the plan which was initially set forth by the Prime Minister in a couple of speeches in his now what we need to see is that what the public perceives right now, the people think about the government's role and performance in delivering on the very common things, like as you said, the inflation and the governance, law and order situation, and many other things. I think these are the things where you have to start working on. Even if you go for the police reform, for example, in 2002, we have very good police reform act in place. So you can just bring and promulgate a law and just go forward. But I think there are many things that have happened. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but there are many things that you need to do. But for that, you have to have some sort of political attitude of engaging people to bring those reforms through Parliament. You cannot do through ordinance.
Do you think that we saw, Ibrahim Sahab, before, let me interject with a question. Before, we saw what happened in Punjab as far as the Senate elections were concerned. And there's a lot that is being said of the role that Chaudhry Parvez played there. And, because of that, I think a lot of acrimony, needless, opposition between the political parties was prevented. Do you think you need that kind of role, not by him, but anybody else, to be played perhaps in the center also between the opposition and the government?
There is no second thought to it. If they can behave or perform
they will
the way
not
they
behave.
did.
You will have to come to some sort of, working relationship with them.
Exactly. I mean, I don't mean behave is a misbehavior. I don't refer to that.
No, I mean,
the way they.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, they. Okay, whichever.
They will reciprocate, I
Right.
understand what you're saying. Ji.
Okay. All I'm saying is I would just like to address an issue here. He was, as he said, he's right to the extent what he mentioned is like you need two-third majority for changing the laws. We are not changing the laws, but you can make the amendments in the laws for the improvement. In order to make the amendments, you don't need two-third majority. You can do this with simple majority.
Right.
And now he's saying that we have a simple majority in the lower parliament, like the National Assembly, but do not have the simple majority. We can basically that requirement can be met through the joint session, where we still, when we count the total number, then we have slight majority. So we can make the amendments in the laws and make improvements in the laws, and we will
You're
be
committed
able
to making those amendments, you're saying.
Right, and
Right.
we will make amendments for the betterment of the system.
But you need that kind of amendment even between, whether we agree or not, whether the opposition, according to you, like you're saying, Nyasab, whether they behave or whether they reciprocate or whether they, are not willing to do those things. There has to be a middle ground. And like I said, I want to go back to what happened in Punjab. Perhaps there's somebody who can play that kind of role. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, that's what's missing in what happened in Punjab. The initiative didn't come from PTI; it came from Mr. Parvez Elahi. So, is there somebody in the center? There are people, like Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Parvez Khattar, but they are just pushed to the back of the party, and it's the aggressive people, who run the show, who come on TV every day, talk, make the decisions. So now, Mr. Ibrahim raised, an interesting point earlier. He was very confidently saying that we will now have the majority in the Senate. But the numbers that I have seen is the opposition has 53 and PTI 47. So how are they planning to have, a majority by the same kind of tactics of horse trading that they are accusing the opposition of doing on the Islamabad seat? Or, they say they are a very moralistic party. Can they say, okay, the opposition has a majority, so we will let them have the Senate chair. We will have some sort of an informal open voting. Can a PTI demonstrate its stock and let that happen? And will it still push the bill for open voting after the Senate election?
I don't think the PTI is going to give the chairmanship to the opposition. I don't think there's any chance.
Irrespective of this chairman Senate, as I explained, I think that part he missed. All I'm saying is that in a joint session, you can get the bill approved. The amendments you make in the bills, you can get approved if you have the majority.
Right. Okay, I understand. Thank you so much for being with us. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you for joining us, Amir Hussain Saab, Ibrahim Khan Saab. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Thank you for joining us today. In terms of what happened today, whether we look at it as a new beginning, it is time for all political parties to see this as a new beginning and move towards a more nationalistic stance where the countries not only do they take importance over what happens as far as their own political parties are concerned, but also about the country, about the issues of reform, and that can not only be done by the government, but it has to happen across the board by all political parties. It has to come from the PDM, it has to come from the PMLN, PPP, all the political parties that are in the opposition also. What happened today is certainly something that needs to be thought about. What kind of politics are we going to have in 2021? Are we going backwards? The intolerance that we are breeding in our political culture, what kind of a political culture are we envisaging in the next 5 years? If this is what's going to happen, if this is what's going to happen to our women in politics, if this is what's going to happen to people, a former prime minister, an elected representative, whether any political party, whether it's the PTI, whether it's the PMLN, whether it's the PPP, what needs to be thought about is what kind of a future in politics is Pakistan going to have. I hope all the political parties can do that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.
The ancient city of Taxila is the heart of stonework in Pakistan. This art, which has been preserved and practiced for centuries, can be seen on many major landmarks of the country. Notably, the Pietra Dura work in the Lahore Fort's Sheesh Mahal. These stone products take days to complete and require immense precision and skill from the craftsmen. The final products are perfect for souvenirs, gifts and decoration pieces, each depicting the richness of Pakistani culture at its best. Camel skin and ivory craft are trademarks of Multan's handicraft repertoire. Camel skin is cleaned, dried and mounted onto molds which can be of any shape desired. Multicolored lacquer painting is then used to ornament the molds, which in the end bear a Mughal or Persian feel. Ivory is crafted into pens, chess sets, jewelry and other accessories such as keychains by the expert craftsmen. Such detailed work, while being extravagant, is indeed a feat to achieve, and craftsmen of Multan produce beauty with their work which is worthy of global admiration. The enchanting arts and crafts of Pakistan.
Sitar is a plucked-stringed instrument used in Pakistani classical music. The instrument flourished under the Mughal Empire. Sitar is named after a Persian word, setar, meaning three strings. It derives its distinctive timbre and resonance from sympathetic strings. Bridge design, a long hollow neck, and a gourd-shaped resonance chamber. There are many popular modern styles of sitar, offered in a variety of sub-styles and decorative patterns.